So it might strike some in my audience that, well, the shutdown's over, everything's fine. Is it?
No, not for many of my constituents. You know, there are issues with federal workers getting their back payroll. There are issues with the deductions that were taken from it. Contractors have not received any compensation. That was one of the things that was taken out. And there are everybody from people like the custodians at the Smithsonian Institution who were unable to work for a month and really were impacted on that because most of those folks live paycheck to paycheck, and some of the higher paid or small businesses who do contracting work with the agencies who were affected. And some of them really had trouble, had to lay people off or couldn't make ends meet.
And just to underscore that point for my audience, so contractors are treated differently by the federal government than full-time employees. Mm-hmm. Full-time employees do receive compensation after a shutdown. It may take a while, it may take a couple of paycheck periods, but it gets back to them. It doesn't mean it's not disruptive, but at least there is some backfill. Contractors don't get anything.
Right.
They are left out in the cold. There have been attempts in the past and just recently to recompensate them, but that hasn't happened. And so if you're a contractor contracting with the federal government in good faith, you are in a really tough situation.
Absolutely, yeah. And some of them, as I said, are small businesses and really tried to make up the difference, but if they weren't getting paid for their contracts, then they weren't able to pay their workers, and their workers were sitting by idly and not able to perform their function.
And oftentimes, and we interviewed some people who fell into this category during the shutdown, because there was no federal contract, because it stops as soon as the government shutdown begins, they have to go in search of other work. Mm-hmm. So then they do that. Oh, great news, you've landed some other thing. Then the shutdown ends, and what does the federal government do? It comes right back and says, well, hey, do your contract. You say, wait a minute. To survive, I went and got other business, and now I can't, it's difficult to juggle both. I mean, that's a real situation.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's just, it doesn't speak well for the government that we can't even pay our own workers.
So do you favor legislation that would just not allow these shutdowns at all under any circumstance? Just prohibit that as a political tool, which it feels like it's sort of become.
Well, there are a lot of different bills pending and ideas about how we end shutdowns.
What's your idea?
I think the only way that we can stop shutdowns is to get rid of the concept of essential employees. So if we had to go a couple days without air traffic control, without transportation security, without border patrol, shutdowns wouldn't take place.
Right. So because let's get a little nerdy on this. In the way shutdowns work, if you're an essential employee, you have to go to work without pay, and everything sort of functions for a while. Stress is developed, but things function. You're saying, no. Everything's got to shut down, and then everyone notices, and then it doesn't happen.
Well, if we're going to shut down the government, we need to shut it down and just see what the actual consequences are. Because when you have these employees, a third of employees, whatever it may be, in the various agencies working, but not being compensated, not being paid, incurring childcare, incurring commuting expenses to perform those functions, it certainly doesn't show what the true impact is.